I will be talking about the challenges in fuel and energy complex of Ukraine. I would like to invite the Minister of Energy, Volodymyr Demchyshyn, and he will try to give answers to the questions you have on the personnel changes in the ministry, on the fan disconnections of electricity and other things. Good afternoon, colleagues. I would like to greet you. I know that you have many questions to me because during the last 2 weeks I did not talk a lot and I did not provide comments on all the questions, and I will try to answer all the questions. But before I do that, I would like to congratulate you with the new year, and I would like to ensure you
Протягом наступного періоду
that during the next period there will be no fan disconnections. There were no disconnections during the last 6 days. A lot was done to refuse from such disconnections, and the new year all Ukrainians will be meeting in warmth and with light, with hope for the future. And now I would like to proceed with the questions. There are many questions. And the questions about fan disconnections, about providing the coal to generating facilities, import of coal, appointments, also the questions about corruption in the ministry, the accusations which concern me, accusations and corruption, and also the work in the Cabinet of Ministers. And I will try to answer all these questions. I will start from disconnections of electricity. That's what interests everyone. First of all, during the first 2 weeks of December, we were using the method of disconnections of electricity in the system. I explained preliminarily that really the capacities and the generation of electricity is ensured at the expense of the burning coal. And because of the anti-terrorist operation, more than 60 mines are on the territory which is not under the control of Ukrainian authorities, and so the coal wasn't supplied for the last 6 months, and the reserves that the power plants had have been depleted, and now more than 25 units are operating on a minimum at the minimum capacity, because most of them are disconnected, and those which operate with minimum capacity because there's no reserve of coal. In December, there were about 300,000 tons of coal used, and in the beginning of the month, there were 1,400,000 tons of coal in reserve. So the stock is unprecedented, very low. The explanation is very simple. In Ukraine, we were producing about 5 million tons of coal on a monthly basis. Now, this is about 2 million tons, but during winter time period, we burn about 3 million tons a month. To provide heating and electricity, the power plants had to burn 3.5 million tons a month. So you can understand that we cannot supply the coal to thermal plants ourselves. We can import it. You know this story about the coal from the Southern African Republic. There were many questions asked about the quality and the price. The center, which is one of the central stations, wasn't operating for a month, but there was a serious problem from Russian Federation again. Any supply of coal was limited during the last month, and in such conditions it was very difficult to balance energy system. There were many accusations about non-transparency in disconnections, but I can assure you that the ministry has done everything so that these disconnections are understandable and transparent. The program of disconnections was formed a long time ago. Every month the limits are given to oblast, to regional administrations and to oblenergos. At the local level, they have a detailed plan of disconnecting some of the consumers. Some consumers have so-called, first of all, the disconnection takes place in the industry. In case there's not enough capacity in the system, the population is disconnected also to control all. To control completely this process of disconnection from the center is impossible, taking into account the territory, the number of consumers, the number of subjects. We give orders which are systemic orders to the system, and that is done by Ukrenergo, that's the system operator in Ukraine, which gives the orders to all oblenergo, to all generating companies. Also, we involved the state energy supervisory committee, their employees who were doing inspections on how the tasks of the ministry and Ukrenergo were executed. There were some violations detected. I had several teleconferences. I talked to the heads of the regional administrations, to local generating companies, and we drafted the plan of forming the public and transparent and fair schedule of disconnection. This schedule has been developed. It will be published, but I hope that we have done a lot to not to use the disconnections in general. So talking about disconnections, I believe that the situation is more or less clear as to what has been done and what is to ensure the that we do not need to disconnect. I will start from coal. Today, during the last 3 days, we see some positive trend. The coal arrives, and these are small volumes which are additionally accumulated, but we do have such accumulation of coal. For that, money was allocated for to purchase the additional volumes of coal, and that money was allocated to thermal generating facilities. There were negotiations with all the participants, starting from Australia, Southern Africa, Kazakhstan. We were discussing the possibility of importing coal from faraway countries. We had negotiations with Russian suppliers as well. At the moment, we expect that every month we will have about 300 tons of additional imported coal coming to Ukraine, which will allow to provide enough volumes for Ukrainian thermal generating facilities to balance the energy system and not to disconnect the consumers. Why I'm so careful talking, and I'm not guaranteeing that we will not disconnect. All depends on the temperature. If the temperature goes down and the consumption goes up, and then with this volume of reserves that we have, we need to understand that 30 units out of 140 do not have coal, and the situation, there might be the situation when we need to disconnect, and during the next 2 weeks, the situation will be more positive, we'll get more reserves, but on the other hand, at the moment, besides the coal, we have resolved the issue of importing electricity. We had negotiations with Moldova, Belarus, Russia on the import of electricity, and at the moment the agreements are signed about the import of 1,500 megawatt of electricity. That is the volume which is sufficient so that during the next 2 weeks not to disconnect, understanding the temperature, but depending on what will be the temperature in the end of the January, I believe that the volume of import of electricity and additional coal that we'll be getting will be enough to balance the system and not to disconnect. So in this combination, the import of electricity up to 1.5 megawatt and additional supply of coal, I believe that these are the conditions which will allow us to stop disconnections. As to that is what I have been doing for the last 3 weeks. Besides the fact that I had to really understand what to do with the personnel in the ministry, I have more than 160 companies under my control. I had interviewed most of the directors to understand what are they, how are they planning to develop their companies. Besides the strategic work, there has been a lot of administrative work done. Also, for some companies, in some companies there were some changes in leadership, and there was a lot of criticism that I appoint some people who are part of some groups. But this issue is very complicated because either I have the opportunity to get a specialist who knows something, but he used to work somewhere, and that's why he's a specialist. And as a rule, such person would work with someone. Good specialists would work in big organizations, and they are associated with them. On the other hand, I can get young people who have limited experience, but they are patriotic, they develop fast, and they think well. And I'm trying to use both strategies. To the ministry, I brought about 20 young people who help me. They are my assistants. They are my advisors. I'm planning that within a short period of time, they will become part of official staff of the ministry, and they will be executing their work officially. But on the other hand, I understand for these young patriotic people to execute their functions efficiently, I need specialists who have worked with someone in the past. And I believe that this is the balance, and I'm trying to attract minimum of experienced people just to step away from some criticism, but I cannot do without them. And on the other hand, I'm attracting new young people. I myself am new in this industry. There's a lot of criticism that I am a bank. I do not understand how the system works, but that is the issue of manager. the publicity, people wanted new faces. They wanted to see those people who are patriots and who will be responsible. Professionalism, if a person puts efforts into that, then a person will very quickly gain professionalism, and the people who I can use as advisors, irrespective whether for myself or for others, those people, they can create quite an adequate group, and they will produce a good result within a short period of time. That's the idea. As to the criticism that in the ministry there's a lot of chaos and the work is not done, but in fact the situation is not easy. There are 300 people working in the ministry. If you look at my ministry is complicated because any direction, oil and gas, coal, nuclear energy, everywhere, electricity, all organizations are connected to some groups of interests. And the personnel is just all within these in these interests. It's sabotage. They lose some documents which I disseminate. We send some documents to the Cabinet of Ministers 3 or 4 times. And in fact, the processes are very complicated. I have to fight that. And only attracting new people, I have a chance to somehow do my task. There are many questions to, well, these are new people in the system, and less than 1 month passed, but in other ministries, is everything fine in other ministries? You can compare. On the other hand, you understand, in the very beginning, they were saying everything will be fine. Don't worry, people who are there, these are well adjusted to one another people. You will be like in a warm bath. I don't want to be in a warm bath. I want to change things as soon as we start canceling some privileges, and we have done that already. We canceled the privileges or subsidies for export of electricity or for electric metallurgical companies, and these are big amounts of money which will be redistributed differently. So there's a big opposition to me, resistance to that, and in such conditions there are situations of conflict all the time. The resource which is used at different level with different force is used. So it's not easy. Talking about appointments, I have commented that. Talking about corruption, what can I say? People who know me, they support me. There is an anti-corruption bureau, and any cases which look like corruption, they will be considered and examined very carefully. There's a prosecutor's office, I understand that. I'm sure that all the things that I'm doing, they are for the benefit of the state. I'm ready to answer all your questions. In fact, I believe I have told you about everything. Please don't repeat what I have mentioned. If you have asked about something new, please, before you ask questions, please introduce yourselves.
Роман Іванченко, Interfax Ukraine.
Interfax Ukraine, I would like to start from, you said that you canceled the subsidies and privileges. Have you canceled the subsidizing certificates? That's the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers, the governmental resolution, official. I believe it will become effective from the 1st of January. And what about the ferrous alloys and the memorandum that was signed last year? It expired, and these subsidizing certificates will not be applied starting from the 1st of January for these consumers. And you were talking about personnel. I don't understand. You appointed some to Ukrinterenergo, and that was the ex-mayor of Slavyansk. I will explain. Then this person who was the head of the fire extinguishing service. Are they professionals in energy sector? First, there was Mr. Romanenko, who's quite experienced specialist. He worked in Ukrinterenergo for more than 20 years. I appointed him. He worked a few days, and taking into account, well, first of all, the system has changed. All the companies, again, you are going back to what we are starting from. All the companies, all people who work in these companies, they were appointed under the old authorities with old values, and the new person comes, and it's very difficult for such person to cope with these tasks. He worked a few days, and I wish him good health, but he just got sick. He's 68. I understand. When he came to this position, I realized that it would be difficult for him, but that's the situation. Then there was his deputy. I had to quickly make a decision because there are too many tasks, and the selection was from what we had, from people who were there. Every day we needed a person to sign documents, to have negotiations on import, on procurement of coal. I believe that that person is quite professional and can cope with that, but this person is there. He's still working, but in fact, I see that the main problem is not professionalism in this situation, but the possibility to change the system. The system, in fact, we need to just try to build it from the scratch. There are 100 people working there who are resisting, opposing all the decisions. They are opposing. How can people from the system break the system? They were heads of the state financial institution under Yanukovych. But that's what I have just told you. These are either people who know how to do something and they worked with someone. I am looking for the balance so that they are not infamous. These people are professionals. These are system administrators who can cope with the problems in the ministry. I've been there for 3 weeks, but I did not manage to do a lot. There are procedures of dismissing people, the procedures of enrolling people, all those special inspections and checks. I cannot work with new people. They legally do not have rights. So I have to look for this balance, to find the balance. But again, in order to build something, we have to clean. And these people in Ukrinterenergo, this will be the first impetus. This will be the first step to cope with the basic problem. Professionally, from the point of view of Ukrinterenergo, we've done everything. The negotiations have been conducted. There's understanding of conditions of supplies of coal and electricity. Price? Microphone. Import of electricity will be taking place. It will be 85 kopecks. This will be the decision of the government, which is confirmed by the National Commission on regulating electricity. That's a little less price than the average weighted for thermal generation. It's cheaper than what Ukrainian power plants are selling at. Let's not turn it into press conference for one publication. Ukrainian news. Russians wrote that Ukrinterenergo signed an agreement with RAO, but they said that the agreement is signed for a year. What are the conditions? Why for a year? These are framework agreements. Every month they are reconfirmed, and that is why the volume, that's a framework agreement for a year. But there was additional agreement between Crimean Peninsula and Ukrinterenergo. What are the terms there? In fact, at the moment, you will understand that we, Ukraine, sells electricity to Crimea at the price of wholesale market price plus the margin which stays with Ukrinterenergo. Nothing is changed in the scheme. The same Ukrinterenergo is the exporter, not the exporter, but the supplier, and they will be supplying this product at a price which is defined by the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers, which will not be lower than the wholesale market price, plus some operational margin for administering. This price in January, it will be, the wholesale market price will be 98 kopecks, 98.8 kopecks per 1 kilowatt. Next question. Ukraine channel. You were saying that there are negotiations with Russia on supplies of coal and electricity. Is it electricity or coal? You were talking about 300,000 tons. Talking about coal, we can bring coal, import coal from Kazakhstan and Russia. By land, theoretically from Poland, but in Poland the coal is more expensive, and they have only the grades which we have in Ukraine. That's for gas, but the anthracite group, that's what we are lacking. They don't have it in Poland or in Europe. There's such coal in the U.S., but that is it would take a long time, plus prices in dollars, and that is more expensive than what we could find in the nearest neighboring countries. Also, we did a lot of work on taking coal from ATO zone. We are re-registering the state mines which are under the control of the Ministry of Fuel and Energy. They opened the accounts in Ukraine. The payment will be made to these accounts. From these accounts, the salaries will be paid to the workers of the coal mines. People will be getting their money, and all the taxes will be paid. And now there's some small volume which we received from the zone, but there's understanding that this volume will increase, and these 3 million tons which are in the ATO zone after the Baltsava is unblocked, they could be used for heat generating plants. The cost of coal is much cheaper than in any other place. Bloomberg agency, you said that we need about 300,000 tons of coal to import. Can you tell how much from Russia, how much from Kazakhstan, and how much from the territory which is controlled by the combatants, also militants? And also we would like to know what would be the total volume of coal that we need to consume in winter, and how much do we lack. During the winter months, December, January, and February, which statistically are the coldest, we use 500 million tons of coal. Out of them, taking into account the combination of electric generating plants, 2/3 were going to gas grades of coal, and 1/3 of 40% anthracite. And the anthracite is what we are lacking. We have enough for gas group, That's Pavlograd Vugilla, Dobrapilla Vugilla, where they produce about 1,400,000 every month. Besides Vugilla Ukraine, not Vugilla Ukraine, but the state-owned mines, coal mines, which are under the control of the ministry, they produce up to 600,000 tons monthly. In principle, for the winter months, we need additionally to burn about 1 million tons. The total, those which we do not have. Historically, that was happening like that. In the summer period, we would form the reserve up to 4 million tons, which was used in winter time, and this did not happen this year. Besides, if there are no limitations on logistics, if there's no state of war in the part of the country, then the mines are operating to the full capacity, the situation is simpler. Then also in winter time, the gas mazout units were operating, and the cost of electricity there is twice higher. It's hryvnia 80 compared to 98 kopecks for thermal generation. These units are much more expensive, but in peak times they could be used. The ratio of the cost at peak time is 1.4, and so the cost is balanced. Now we cannot use it because, in fact, we do not have any extra gas. Ukraine paid for gas in advance to Gazprom. We receive more than 300 million BCM on a reverse, but that's a limited volume. That's limited not just technologically but financially. In fact, the situation is very difficult because the starting resource was limited during the first period. It's very difficult to change the system because the system is full of those rules which, according to which it has been operating for 20 years. There's no financial resource. Americans, Europeans come and they say, what is the problem? Everything could be done. Buy gas, buy mazout, bring coal, but we're trying to do it efficiently. We have a choice. Either we do it expensively, and we have no money for that. You see the situation with the budget, with the national bank, with the exchange rate. On the other hand, under these limited volumes, we need to find some solutions. We can say, I'm not sure that any other minister of fuel and energy in the world who would have the similar situation when during the season of heating I have to resolve such problems, having no financial support, having partners around me who are quite aggressive.
Дефіцит спалювання, але його
The shortage of burning, but it could have been formed at the expense of reserve. The possibility to transport by sea is there, but during a month we can bring not more than 400,000 tons via ports. The port infrastructure is limited. The import was always limited. We never were importing big volumes because we had a surplus of coal. The infrastructure is designed for export, and that's absolutely different infrastructure. Russia was blocking, but now we have some agreements, and I see that they are executed. During the last 3 days, we received more than 150,000 tons. It looks like there are no limitations. 300,000, that's the volume. I'm using the indicators of Center Energa, the state company that contracted these volumes for January, and they're planning to bring them. There's DTEC, which is bringing parallel to that from 500 to 700,000 additionally. They are planning to bring about 1 million, but it will be burned. There will be no accumulation, no reserve. When I was talking about the situation, we understand that even if we receive coal, it will be burned. We cannot create a reserve till the end of the hearing system. We'll be living in such a situation. I would like to ask, out of these 300,000, how much will be brought from Russia? I know that during the first days of January, first 10 days of January, we'll receive about 160,000 tons from foreign countries. Then by the end of January, not less than 160,000, 320 we will get from foreign countries. From the territory which is non-controlled by us, we expect to get not less than 200,000 tons. That's unclear because it depends on many factors. Depends on how the plan of truce will be implemented. It depends on whether Debaltseve will be unblocked. The rest will arrive from Russian Federation. 4 more questions, I understand. 112, Ukraine. In connection with the complicated situation in the ministry in the energy sector, and because of the comments of the Prime Minister of Ukraine, are you planning to leave your position? In fact, I'm not holding to this position. I'm putting efforts to being useful. I'm sure that I can be useful. People who work with me, they believe into me, they are sure, and I believe that there are certain results with all the complexity of the situation. I understand that in the Cabinet of Ministers, it is very important to understand each other and to work as one whole. I put all the efforts to become part of this collective of people. If there are some certain things that I cannot do, then that's the decision of the Parliament. I'm part of the team. News 24, you were talking about personnel. Do you know such facts and what is done in order to get rid of this situation when the mine is on the territory which is under the control of Ukraine, but the director either supports LNR and DNR and blocks the transportation of coal? And Shebelinska, we submitted the documents to extend the regulations for another year. As to coal mines, I've told you 52 mines. Are there. I did not start changing all the. I did not start changing all the management, but I am planning to present the plan of privatization, reorganization during the next 2 months, and liquidation of coal mines. Those coal mines which are attractive for investments, they will be privatized. They will get into more efficient hands. And historically, I see that we did not know how to manage these assets because of different regions. The geology is complicated, and the coal mines were not receiving enough money. The management was weak. On the other hand, I see some private companies that earn money on producing coal. and the cost of the ton of coal in private company is many times less. In our system, the cost is not less than 1,400 hryvnias, not less, but it's higher. It's understanding where we can save. And taking into account that in 2015, in the budget, there are no subsidies to compensate the difference in cost. I believe the only solution could be to make the price for coal produced at the state coal mines should be increased, and the directors will have to compete for a buyer who will be paying money. This is a different system. And yesterday we had a meeting with them. We explained the situation. I hope they do understand that they will have to live in new conditions. Plus the procedure of privatization, preparation to reorganization will be also quite active. And in this process, some of these people will change themselves. But because we are talking about privatization, I look at this situation as the possibility just to give this problem to someone else. Because in these circumstances, the state cannot do it. Union agency, could you please tell the Prime Minister criticized you publicly? Did you have a meeting with the Prime Minister after that? Will you discuss this situation? Did you discuss this situation with the President? And the second question on Укргазвидобування. There's a criminal case filed against the head. Will you initiate changes in the management of this company? Talking about the leadership of the country and the understanding of the situation, I can assure you that both the President and the Prime Minister understand clearly the situation in energy complex, and they understand problems and possible solutions and the efforts that are put into that and the results of this work. Second, after yesterday's press conference, I did not talk to them, but he made this comments at the last meeting of the government. He was explaining his position. I understand that we need to communicate more and tell about what was done, what is being done. I explained that a lot of chaos is because there are such important problems which are to be resolved urgently, and they do not fall under the procedures which exist in the Cabinet of Ministers to submit the documents for approval like it should be done is impossible, because we disconnect consumers today. I come and I say I need the resolution today. Some issues require non-standard solutions, and we need to invent how to come out of the situation. And that influences all the participants of this process. So a lot of attention was paid to me during the meetings of the Cabinet of Ministers. As to Укргазвидобування, in fact, that's the management that was appointed under the new authorities, under the new government. That is a problematic issue. In fact, formally, I just approve the appointments. I cannot appoint myself the leadership of Укргазвидобування. I have the right just to approve it. I believe that we need to find for the champions of Ukrainian economy, we need to find top professionals We need to understand that they will cost a lot, and because they have to execute so difficult tasks. But in case with Укргазвидобування, there are many tasks. That's the company that provides 12 billion out of 42 billion that are consumed, billion cubic meters of gas, which are consumed in Ukraine. And that is gives a possibility to make price relatively low for consumers. This is what is discussed within Naftogaz with Ministry of Finance, because the deficit that was in Naftogaz, we have no money to finance it. There are two methods. There's a possibility to operationally improve the situation and to reduce corruption, to close the schemes, to organize the auctions of sale for sale of oil and liquefied gas according to transparent principles. Also, investment programs may help, and the money should be used more efficiently. There are many tasks. I believe that the public selection should be made. There are about 10 of such Ukrainian champions of industry, and we can find the best people. And not the question is from 1+1, no. Okay, thank you for your attention. And one more question, if we may. I still would like to ask about the supplies from Russia, this agreement that is signed. In which currency will the payment be done? Is there some minimum volume fixed? There's no minimum volume. The basic agreement is in rubles. And the supply to Crimea, the agreement that you signed with the occupant, with what company? Are there any guarantees provided by Ukraine as to supply of electricity to Crimea? In fact, in Crimea, in ATO zone, Ukrainian citizens live. Everyone talks about that. I can tell you more. Now, Ukraine supplies just to ATO zone 1 billion kilowatt hours, 800 million hryvnias a monthly, 300 million cubic meters of gas monthly. And that is the humanitarian assistance that goes for such citizens. And to make political statements would be wrong now. Ukraine is doing a lot to support those citizens. To talk about occupants, I don't want to do that. Talking about the price, that is minimum market price at which electricity is supplied. The price which is higher than wholesale market price without any discounts, subsidies, or whatever. With Russian company. Such guarantees cannot be provided technologically. We've seen during the last month there were several accidents. Besides the fan disconnections which were applied there, there were some accidents. There were moments when for half a day they would disconnect supply there because there are just 3 lines there. Technologically, it's impossible. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. Thank you for this productive briefing.